Some of the biggest companies in the world, they don't start with just a brilliant idea. Sometimes they start with a single, painful memory. This is the story of how a tough childhood moment in a Brooklyn housing project became the foundation for a global brand with over 30,000 stores. It's the story of Howard Schultz and the one day that changed absolutely everything.
And this quote right here, this is the key to the whole thing. This isn't some fancy business philosophy he came up with later. This was a personal promise a young boy made to himself that would end up guiding every single major decision he made for the rest of his life.
So to really understand that promise, we got to go back in time, back to Brooklyn. For a young Howard Schultz, life in a small apartment wasn't about dreaming big. Nope, it was about survival. His life's purpose wasn't discovered in a boardroom. It was forged in a family crisis.
So here's what happened. His father, a hardworking man, just a regular guy driving a truck, slips on some ice, a broken ankle. Because of that, he loses his job. But the real disaster, the thing that turned this from bad to catastrophic, was what they didn't have. No health insurance, no workers' comp. The family was left with absolutely nothing to fall back on. And that feeling of powerlessness, of seeing his dad stripped of his dignity, that was seared into his mind forever.
Okay, so let's fast forward a bunch of years. Schultz actually becomes the first person in his entire family to go to college. He eventually gets a job at a small company in Seattle you might have heard of, called Starbucks. One day, they send him on a business trip to Italy. And that trip, well, it would change everything. Not just for him, but for coffee culture as we know it.
What he saw was like two different worlds. On one hand, you had the old Starbucks, which basically just sold bags of coffee beans. That's it. But then there was what he discovered in Italy, these vibrant cafes that were community hubs, places for real connection. And that's when the light bulb went off. He realized coffee isn't just a product, it's an excuse for people to feel like they belong. So he rushes back to Seattle, just buzzing with this revolutionary vision to completely transform Starbucks. He pitches them on creating a community space, a third place between work and home. And the founders' response? A flat, simple no. They just didn't believe Americans would ever pay for the experience. They didn't see his vision at all. So now he's at a crossroads. He has to make a choice. Believe in his vision or just accept the way things are. He chose his vision. He quit Starbucks to build his own company. And that, my friends, is when the real test began. A test of belief against overwhelming, crushing doubt.
217. Let that number sink in. That is how many potential investors told Howard Schultz he was wrong. Not 10, not 50, 217 times he poured his heart into his pitch and walked out with nothing but a rejection.
And why they all say no? Well, the reasons sound almost ridiculous now. They told him things like, coffee is just a commodity, like wheat. Or, Americans will never give up their drip coffee makers to sit around in a cafe. They said his whole vision for community and connection could never, ever scale into a real business. But he just kept going. He kept pitching, kept believing, and finally, a few people said yes. He raised just enough to start his own coffee shop, and, in this incredible twist of fate, he eventually became successful enough to go back and buy the original Starbucks, merging it with his vision. Now he was in charge, and he had a chance to finally heal that old wound from his childhood. So one of his first big moves as CEO was something totally radical for the time. He decided to offer comprehensive health insurance, not just to the full-time staff, but to part-time employees too. Wall Street thought he was insane. Investors called it a complete waste of money. So why did he do it? He did it because he remembered his father, helpless on that couch with no safety net. You see, this wasn't a business decision from a spreadsheet. This was a human decision. He was building the kind of company that would have taken care of his dad. It was all about dignity. And that very principle, putting people and their dignity first, well, that became the secret ingredient to Starbucks' explosive growth. He proved that a business built on culture and human connection could not only survive, but it could thrive on a truly global scale. And the scale of that success is just staggering. From the 11 stores he took over, Starbucks grew to more than 30,000 locations all over the world, all built on an idea that pretty much everyone told him was a joke. So why does all this matter? Because Starbucks was never really selling coffee. The true product was dignity, opportunity, and belonging. He wasn't selling a beverage. He was selling the very things his family was denied all those years ago. So when you boil it all down, what's the ultimate lesson from this journey?
Well, I think there are three big ones. First, you can turn your pain into your purpose. Second, you have to believe in your idea so fiercely that other people laughing at you becomes irrelevant. And third, you have to find the power to just stay in the fight, especially when quitting is the easier, more logical choice.
And that really brings us to the final thought. The story of Howard Schultz isn't about being born with all the advantages. It's about taking the hardships, the rejections, and all the doubt, and forging it all into something unbreakable. So the question to leave you with is this: what is your unbreakable belief?